morning to everyone joining us live from all around the world. I am Akshay Bajaj and I serve as the co founder of Global Learning Space Network. It is my privilege to welcome you all to this panel discussion organized by CIVOM on the occasion of International Day of Education 2025. This day reminds us that education is not just a right but a powerful tool to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. This year, we focus on education's role in empowering individuals and communities to build a sustainable and inclusive future. We are joined by an incredible panel of leaders and changemakers who will share insights and ideas on how education can shape a better tomorrow. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation. Now, let's dive in. On first, we have the legendary educator, Ms. Lakshmi Kumar. Here's the founder director of the Orchard School Pune and the school director of Avsara Academy. She brings extensive experience in education management. Her forte lies in educational leadership, organizational development, and effective people management. Lakshmi ma'am, it's such an honor to have you among us today.
Thank you. It's my honor to be part of this wonderful panel of colleagues and panelists. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Next up, we are joined by Dr. Parul Minhas, a passionate advocate who promotes holistic health in schools and explores the transformative power of well designed educational spaces in ensuring students' well being. Dr. Parul serves as the Director of Research and Innovation at Education Design International. Welcome to this session, Parul ma'am.
Thank you, Akshay. Thank you so much.
Great. Finally, on third, we have Mr. Yogi Patidar, a young award winning entrepreneur, Business World 40 Under 40 Education Award, who is passionate about changing education in India and beyond. He is a graduate of both EDIA Ahmedabad and JNV, and he co founded CIVOM, a company that designs learning spaces to help students become future leaders. He's also involved in other businesses and he loves technology, philosophy, literature, fashion, and supporting his team. I extend a warm welcome to Yogi sir.
Thank you.
Perfect. To everyone watching us from all around the world, this conversation is as much yours as it is ours. So please drop your thoughts in the chat and leave your questions in the comment section. We would love to ask them to our guest panelists. Now let's get started. This session is divided into 5 phases, and all of these phases are packed with exciting questions and some amazing surprises coming your way. So let's kickstart with the first phase, that is understanding 21st century skills. On first, we have a question for Lakshmi ma'am. Ma'am, please define and expand on the key skills needed to thrive in the 21st century. Example, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, etc. Over to you, ma'am.
So I'm kind of expanding the concept of skills to competencies because sometimes we narrow skills to a certain domain. And I think for me, the biggest requirement for going forward is also what I call the value and attitude. So, strangely and interestingly, with the kind of advent of AI and all the technology access, we have reduced the knowledge domain to information, which is not the same. Knowledge has certain level of, wisdom that is embedded in it. And then the skills, we have reduced it to more of what we call the doing repeatedly, practicing. But I think the third component of the attitude that is embedded is when it is a holistic KSA. So for me, the first, I kind of take a reference to a lot of, the standard conversations about collaborative work and problem solving. But for me, the first competency that I would think of is the lifelong learning competency, because I think we have realized that my education can take me this far, but it is my continuous readiness to upskill and relearn and unlearn, and that learn beyond my domains is what will actually take me further. That to say that I'm a science teacher, but I need to know art. I'm a math teacher and I need to know how important it is to integrate the physical education in it. Hence, I think for me, this attitude of lifelong learning, which is so skill embedded, which is a special important 21st century attitude, and that I'm ready to expand my knowledge horizon is my first one to offer. The second one is that of self agency, meaning that the drive and internal motivation to take charge of, whether it is my own learning, whether it's my upskilling, whether it is about domain shift, or whether it is about aligning to my students' need, is something that nobody is going to sit with you and tell you. That was the time where, my younger days of career trajectory was that people would say you require this. Today we expect that the millennials and the new generation, with all the access to information, they are expected to be aligned to what does it mean to be student or self agency. So I am expected to actually actively seek a mentor. I'm expected to actively enroll in a new upskilling course or a certification course. I'm actively expected to join a webinar. There is nobody who's sitting there to say, "Bhai, ye karna hai," which is for me a very, very important, new competency for 21st century, because what is required is not constantly someone nagging you and demanding you as some kind of a framework that you need to meet, but some kind of that I am here. So we all know that being proactive is a very 21st century requirement. Okay. The third one for me is the critical social skill, that my ability to interact with others. And why is it even more relevant for 21st century? Because we have a generation that is largely used to connecting with people via a tool, via a gadget, via a mediator, via someone who's already reading your algorithms and even giving you a text ready what to say, or someone who is actually giving you a whole drafted love letter or an apology letter, with using chat gpt. So when people really come together, and all that is left with is me as a tool. And I think if we do not hone that skill, the third one, as this connecting or interacting with others, I think we are talking about a technology driven human robot rather than a technology skilled but a humane person. So for me, the third important thing is that ability and a skill to interact with the others. The fourth one is interacting with the world. The world consists of not just people and technology. The world consists of diverse communities of people, multiple races and multiple cultures and multiple languages and ecosystems. But it also consists of the animal world and the nature world, and which oftentimes we kind of taken it for granted. And I want to bring it back, because just constantly saying that you need to be this cool guy who knows how to use AI, but you really don't stand up for something, let's say a cruelty for an animal, I think is something that we cannot afford for 21st century. We need to restructure and rebuild our world, which is going to be holistic, and nothing is going to be less important. Definitely not that human beings are not the center of the universe. We have seen it. And I think if we do not know how to connect with nature, how to connect with other elements of our life, I think we're just behaving like we're the center of the universe, and the universe is reminded us time and again that you are not. And the fifth one I'm bringing definitely back, using the ability to use the skill to use diverse tools. So for me as an educator today, uh, we still are largely teacher on stage, the sage on stage. It's still a very largely teacher talk. And it's still largely, let's face it, that we are the center of knowledge systems. We need to shift our paradigm to say that we have students who already have that, which means how do I actually embrace diverse tools, which is also for a teacher as 21st century. I may belong to 19th century as an individual, or a 20th century as an individual, but if I'm going to work with the future, I need to work as a future facilitator, which means I must have the ability and skill to use diverse tools and resources in my classroom. And the next one for me is the multi literacy. I think we cannot we have kind of mastered certain kinds of literacies, and we have equated, unfortunately, literacy to education and certification, whereas literacy is about an integration of this knowledge system to connect with people. So the multiliteracy can actually include that, connecting with people, connecting with other ecosystems, connecting using digital tools. So you have a digital literacy, language literacy, financial literacy, human literacy, or a relationship literacy. For me, is very important, and a communication literacy. So how do you kind of integrate this multiple? And the last one, very, very important, is the skill for transdisciplinary. I think this is going to be an overarching skill. We could be specialists, but it is equally important to be generalist. Because if I'm only constantly thinking about, let's say, in my engineering degree and designing something, but I need to know who is my end user, who is my end consumer, who is going to really eat my pudding, and that person's cultural context, the gender context, the social emotional context, everything needs to be understood. So which means that I need to know technology, but it's equally important to know aesthetics, and equally important to know the emotional social context of my consumer, so to say. Which is, for me as a teacher, I need to know where my students come from. It's not enough that I know my subject. It is equally important that I know my subjects. So I stop here.
Those were some very bold thoughts coming in right at the start of this session from Lakshmi ma'am. So I'll recount those 7 points. On the first, we had importance of an attitude of lifelong learning. On second, we had self-agency, that is internal drive to upskill and reskill yourself. Third was critical social skills, that is ability to interact with others. Fourth was interacting with the world. On fifth, we had skill to use diverse tools and resources. Sixth, we had multiliteracy, and on seventh, we had skill for transdisciplinary learning. And after such bold thoughts, I get on to the other panelists. Please share your quick take on this. Parul ma'am, please.
Uh, this is just amazing, and I think this is just the stage that I wanted to build upon, because before we understand how we talk about learning spaces, we really need to understand how the learning is evolving over time. And you so beautifully put those 7 points together, and I wholeheartedly agree with each and every one of those. And I think I'm going to, whatever I had thought of leaving that behind, I'm going to expand on what you just said, point by point. So when we talk about lifelong learning or the attitude of lifelong learning, and it has to be about, integrating and connecting the dots, and also joining this to your last point about the transdisciplinary knowledge, which, because I feel that as adults, as educators, architects, we need to learn that skill of transdisciplinary knowledge. Children by default have it. They look at the world as a whole already. They are looking at you, and even a 2-year-old would know that, oh, something is wrong with mommy, that's why she's behaving this way, or she's upset or something like that. They'll come and hug you, and you will know that they have a sense of there is something wrong behind just the behavioral aspects that we see. But as adults, we probably, with all that conditioning that we go through in all those years, we forget to do that. So I believe that for being a lifelong learner, and for also being able to connect the dots from various disciplines, the first thing we need to break away is the silos that we've created in the learning spaces. We cannot, when we have classrooms and teachers, the cells and bells structures that we talk about, where different subjects are taken by different teachers, and one classroom is a world in itself. So that's how we probably teach children to live in an isolated world and in a place where they do not see anything else. And we think that we are helping them to focus, and but instead we are actually teaching them to uh, narrow their perspective instead of being a part of the bigger community and widening their perspective. So in learning spaces, we need to be very, very careful about, are we actually putting them in the boxes, or we are broadening their horizons by the way of spaces that we design for them. And secondly, the most important one for me is the self agency that you mentioned, the talk about internal motivation. And again, I'll go back to a natural tendency of a child. A child is naturally motivated to learn. They want to walk, they want to talk, even when we're not teaching them to. They want to do everything that that is challenging their limits, right? But then we tell them that, okay, sit down and learn this subject because I am asking you to do that. So we need to understand that we need to nurture that self agency, that internal motivation. And in order to do that, we need to help children fall in love with learning. A child sees you talking and they love that. Wow, it's so wonderful to talk. I also want to learn to talk. So that should come from inside. And again, when we create spaces where, like you mentioned, the social interactions, the face to face interactions are happening naturally, a lot of them, and very positively. So the children, they tend to develop these skills without any formal training, I believe, because interaction is something that we naturally want to do, right? So we cannot teach. We think that, oh, this child has great communication skills. They didn't come from the child sitting in a corner and practicing communication by himself or herself. It just comes from doing, right? And then you talked about connection with nature, which is very, very important and interesting. And the one particular sentence that you said, I totally agree with it, and I really love it, that human beings should realize, and we have realized, that we're not center of this world. So we need to understand that we are a part of the ecosystem, but at the same time, we have a lot of potential to do good or to do harm to the system. So we need to understand how we connect to the nature in a way that our tendencies to make the whole ecosystem better come out. And with children, the irony of today's education is that we make them sit in classrooms which are way, way disconnected from nature, and then we ask them that, oh, you should be environmentally educated, and we expect them to be really the stewards we want, and we save the world and climate action and this and that, and they don't know how it feels to go out and be in nature. So if that exposure happens from the very beginning, and the child understands that I cannot survive without the connection with the nature, I cannot survive until the air is clean, I cannot survive until I see a lot of diversity of plants and animals in my surroundings, they will not know they need it. So when they've grown up in that environment, when they tend to get connect to that environment on day-to-day basis, whether in their homes or in their schools, they will naturally become the kind of citizens we want them to become. They will naturally oppose anything that's going against the balance of the ecosystem that we talk about. And like you said, the another thing that you talked about was to learn to use the diverse tools, and the teacher should not be the sage on the stage. So that also connects to something that I very proactively advocate, which is self-directed learning. Again, that comes down to internal motivation and observing a child's inherent tendencies, and teacher acting as a facilitator. So, for a teacher to act as a facilitator, you cannot stand in front of 30 students and connect with each child in the classroom itself. So you have to have those kind of abilities. The space should allow you to connect with children on one-to-one basis, or it should allow for children to do their own thing when the time comes, or for them to work in a group. So we need to create that diversity in the spatial environment also, in order to allow that self-directed learning. So I guess all these points really, really, allow us or ask us to push our envelope of the way we design learning spaces, the way we've been designing it so far, and the way we should be designing it. So like Prakash says, that spaces should not be the barriers for educators. Spaces should be the facilitators. So when we have an educator like Lakshmi ma'am, who knows what the future holds and who knows what 21st century skills are, our job as architects is to facilitate the kind of learning that you want to execute in your school. So that's my take on the attitude with which we should design learning spaces.
Perfect, perfect. Very beautifully illustrated. Now, this conversation has become really interesting. I would like to turn this conversation on to Yogi sir. Yogi sir, what's your quick take on this before we move on to the second phase?
No, I think if I draw down this competencies or attitudes or skills, to inculcate in the learners, how as in the work, the creative work which we do, how we should put it across. And I feel very rightly put across is the need of today's time and future's time, that you need to connect to yourself. I always say the goal of education from education should shift to the self elevation. If we can, if we can change our goal to self elevation, now we'll be spiritually elevated. I started knowing myself as a person and then started learning over it. So occupation of the goal of education from to occupation, or to occupy, or to have professional skills, has to go away, because I may not be happy after 40 years, even after doing excellent. I feel, how do we bring dynamic world outside inside the classroom? Our learning space should be designed in that idea that whatever dynamism we see in real life has to get into the classroom. Okay, if we can put that into our learning spaces, we'll allow them all those things. So allowing them to experiment, or to read, and not confined, like Parul said about not making silos and making it wider. So if we get this dynamic world outside in the classroom, we are giving them the the live feel. Because eventually, if classroom cannot be the area where I can simulate my experiences which I'm going to use in real life, there is no fun of having them. Okay. On similar context, I would put like when we see a classroom, the community is only about 25, 30, 35 kids. How to broaden this community? Because if you ask a kid, and his there would be a very less number of people they would be connected outside the classroom. Okay. So how do we, broaden the horizon of students? Because more number of students has you better social skills. In the world, when you go in real life, you cannot confine by 10 people, 25 people. Okay. So how do you increase this, numbers of students in the connection, in a social connection? So if you have this, the idea of this connecting with others can be drawn down. Okay. Which Lakshmi ji mentioned about the the green spaces, or connecting the environment. We put it as life centric design. Okay. How do we build life centric designs? So, like, initially when the whole design system started working around, we thinking about human centric design. So when I create a cup, probably I would do a handle because my hands can hold it out. But if I think of the same from a life-centric design, uh, what kind of material I use, which cannot have a negative impact over environment. Okay. So the moment I put that context of life centricity, so thinking about the breeds beyond the human, okay, and building on that, or utilizing that skill and knowledge in creating products or solutions or spaces for that matter would give us those intentional drive about how to create this simple or learning spaces. Uh, the fourth thing I would say is which is more related to human connection, but allowing those kind of feasibilities of having flexible tones. How quickly I adapt, change the environment, so that this which we talked about transdisciplinary or multidisciplinaries can be evolved inside it. How do we connect a mathematics to a history? Can be allowed in the same set. So I always give an example that if you look at laboratories today in classroom or in the schools, you have been given a particular period for that. Okay, and you are supposed to hold your thoughts to go to laboratory, go there, and if you go in the laboratory, you have been supposed to have predefined experiment, and you have to do it with a predetermined result. Okay, the पोटेशियम परमैंगनेट डालना है, डाइल्यूट करना है, इतने में डाइल्यूजन आएगा. You cannot change the result also. It is all prefixed. So where there is a laboratory feel of it, where there is an experimentation of it, where there is an exploration of it. So if you wanted to connect this transdiscipline, we have to allow that flexibility in the classroom. I cannot have hold my thought by the time I go to laboratory and it may vanish away. So how to create this conduciveness of allowing all those horizons of transdiscipline and multidiscipline in the learning spaces. So I would try to connect those attitudes to those kind of experiences in the learning spaces we want to drive into. So would be my approach to doing it or
Thank
creating
you
it.
for wonderfully summing this up, Yogi sir. Now, next up, we have an exciting phase coming up where we have the topic related to designing spaces that foster 21st century skills. So, Parul ma'am, the next question or the next request is coming up to you. Please share design strategies and examples of learning spaces by EDI that promote collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and technology integration. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Akshay. So I think the first and the foremost strategy I want to mention that Yogi was also talking about, that we should find ways of getting children out of that group of 25 or 30. So at EDI, we advocate something called small learning communities, where we say that if you have a bigger school, you break it down to small communities of, say, 150 children per community, and that community itself, it has the children of different age groups, but of course the similar developmental group. And these children, this particular community, these children are free to move in that particular space of 150, and that 150 feels like their own um, home space kind of thing. And they have teachers collaborating, they have peer mentoring, where seniors are teaching juniors or peers are teaching their peers. So all those things, along with various ways of mentorship, where teacher is just the facilitator, and the teacher, see, the biggest job of the teacher should be, or parent should be, to deeply observe a child's natural tendencies and see where they want to go, and that is the basis for self-directed learning also. So that can happen in an environment where there are minimum of barriers, but at the same time we cannot let children just be, if it is a school of 1,000 or a 2,000 kids, you just can't say that, oh, there are no there are no classrooms, no walls, and children are free to move around. That's not safe and secure also. So a small learning community is a safe and a secure environment where the child is free to interact with a lot of individuals of various age groups. And then they have multiple spaces like maker spaces, or your STEM rooms, or your robotic labs, and your spaces for group work, spaces for self reflection. So all those diverse spaces come together to, and of course you do have that opportunity to be the sage on the stage. You have the opportunity to bring children together and lecture wherever it is needed to be. But what we are saying is that instead of designing for just one modality, which is lecturing, we design for 20 modalities of learning. So where the traditional classroom style happens, but it is only one of the 20 ways in which the teaching and learning is happening. So that we think is the right way of approaching learning in the 21st century, and also for unleashing the multiple intelligences that Lakshmi ma'am was talking about. So if there is a child who has that natural potential to teach or to be a good mentor, they get to do that. Somebody who's good at organizing things, gets to organize various maybe themes or plays or group gatherings, or to host a show or do a podcast or anything. So all those sorts of things, you allow them to do that in that safe space that we create, and we call it small learning community. And it's not hard. Like if it is a vertical school, you can probably divide it by floors, and if it is a horizontal school, you can create some barriers in a way that if a child comes to their community, they are free to move around, and it's not unsafe for them. Like they don't go out of that particular space, but still, instead of being confined to a classroom, they are confined to a bigger community cell, which is also very close to how the real life community happens. The real life interaction happens, where you are interacting with different adults, where you're interacting with uh, children of different age groups. So you tend to learn all these 21st century skills not by a program or a curriculum, but just by the way uh, you are just being in that particular community. Yes,
Okay.
I think that's enough
So
for now.
mhm.
I can go
That
on
was
otherwise.
very wonderful. Those were very wonderful insights. I think we are onto something very powerful here. And since it's about designing learning spaces, so let us turn this conversation to Yogi sir. So please highlight how CIVOM contributes to creating future-ready learning spaces and supports educators in implementing innovative pedagogies.
So I would say we take a deep conversation on researching on physiology, psychology, and pedagogy, all three of it. So it is as much as important to understand human anatomy and physiology, how our biology works, because at the end of the day, it is this part of our body, the brain, which need to stimulate. So how actually biology works with any kind of tool or a product or a space we are utilizing. So we had been having myths that making sit kids on hard surfaces would give them discipline and control, versus it is not. You go to anywhere, be it airport, theaters, everywhere, you have a soft system coming in. But why it is still for the kids? Okay, so when you look at the our whole shape of human body, this is very curvy, linear in that approaches. So I always give example to people, say, how do you uh, how do you rebuild your bone structure if it is broken? So if you got your bone broken, how do you really do it? So doctors generally put into a particular shape and hold it for a while, and then it repairs naturally. Okay, that's the tendency of biology. Now think of it, if you are using certain shape, what is going to do it with your body? If I'm doing a very flat surfaces, it's going to harm my body in a certain way, because my bone will build differently because of the surfaces. So how do we take care of that? Another example is like fidgetings. Okay, so I don't know. There is a research about fidgeting, that fidgeting your legs can burn your uh, calories to almost about 300 in an hour's time. Okay, if you fidget. At the same time, Fidgeting also can help you create a blood flow, so your fatigue can be dropped down. Okay, versus in today's time, if you see when kids fidget, teachers want them to stop because that becomes hurdle in their communication, because that's a one way communication. So idea is, which is important part of biology. So if I wanted to understand fatigue and attention span and engagement and activeness, what is my biological senses which gives me these alarms? So we take a deep context on understanding these physiologies and building products around it. So if my chair is not allowing me a multi actions, cannot create this transdiscipline or active areas at all. Okay, I mean, we talk about reflections. How what is that part of our biology which helps us calming it down? Because my composition would decide the reflection of the content I have taken and re-reflect around it. So how would I do it? How would I create this say a zen space, a zen zone for that matter? So how this is to really understand that if we go to our pranayams and when we sit folded legs, what happens to our biology? Okay, when you do different asanas, when you allow this, so why there is only one position given to the classrooms, that you're sitting on a chair and on a table, why those other positions are not allowed? So the moment I talk about independent thinking, independent postures are at the same time very important. Okay, because this is how, if my body is not comfortable, my mind would not be. So this is the kind of context we take from physiologists. Okay, psychologists for that matter. We talk about learning and how do memories stuck. Okay, so I say one of the example is emotional. Okay, so the emotional sensor of brain called amygdala has a beautiful settings. The moment you have hyper emotion, it stores the memory. So if you ask anyone, the hyper emotion time of their ninth class, it would come to you right away. So think of it, our brain, we know the trick of it. That I can stuck to the memory if it isn't hyper emotional. So once you drive this into a pedagogical format of having emotional based learning or a storytelling or a video which is emotional driven, it can be stored for a lifelong learning. So if I need to build a experience for this kind of emotional based learning, what should be a setting? How do we really build this kind of setting to deliver that emotional system? Another context is our brains are wired in vector formats. Our brains doesn't go linear or horizontal or orbital. It's vector format. So now we are talking about this and our mind goes somewhere else. So now Lakshmiji once mentioning that you can force kids to physically sit in the classroom but not mentally.
Mm.
Okay? They can be mentally any absent there. So if you need to have this mental presence there, or this dots to be connected, you have to allow them this transdiscipline. The whole idea of transdiscipline comes from this. So what you are exposed to, and no, CO2 can be meant differently for me, differently for Lakshmiji, Akshay, and for you, Parulji. And it's a very different context altogether. So how does this vectors get connected, and this transdiscipline is
Mm.
allowed to me? So who decides this, idea of linear training and educating? I would not say we are educating them. We are actually training them for a certain kind of actions. So we have to break this norm of training to become another humanoid, rather than having this allowance of this. And this is where all our emotional, biological stimuli would come through. And third thing, I talk about pedagogy. So all these pedagogical references today actually come from researching the brain and the actions from there. So the recent report we were reading about SCAN, Somatic Cognitive Action Network. So how our body movements can help the brain cognition. Okay. So is it the brain which gives the instruction, or is it the hand which gives the instruction to the brain? How does this whole somatic cognitive system works, and how do you build the product or space around it? So once we see this connection, that if I'm free, I don't have any thought. How does I get engaged first? Can the products around it help me, getting this engagement activated? Okay. When I get bored, what kind of posture my body takes? Okay. So when you say what are the learning signals of a of a learner, think of it in that format. So there can be a lot of physical indicators. I'm inclined towards, I'm nodding, I'm smiling, my pupil dilations, all of this, free movements, all that would give you a signal of it. But then when you need these signals, what kind of products would make you comfortable at first, and then activating all of that further. So the settings around it. So this is how we kind of approaches we take at CIVOM on developing products and
You
spaces.
remind me of that cricketer AB de Villiers, who used to be famous for his 360-degree shot. So that was like a 360-degree answer we were expecting. And that degree brings me now. Let me also turn this conversation to Lakshmi, ma'am. Ma'am, since you are an educator and you heard the biological and design aspects, so what's your take on the biological and design aspects since you have also developed so many schools? Please, ma'am.
I think it's interesting that neither my teacher training has given me these perspectives, nor my own education as a student has given me these experiences. So, where do I draw this knowledge from? One of the things I remember when Yogi had come to the earlier school, and this idea that just because you have built walls around a classroom and you have believed that you have minimized the distraction and hence you are in control of the student attention is how myopic and how illusionary it can be. Because I can be here and at this moment, I can be anywhere in my mind, right? I mean, I'm thinking about what is there for lunch and have I closed the refrigerator properly? Or, if I have a young child, I hope my son likes the dabba that I've packed, you know. Or for a young child, oh, I hope my parents are not fighting. I remember a lot of those challenges are there. During the COVID time, I remember kids have seen so much at home that we came back to school, those memories were also continuing to haunt them. So I think we need to get out of this illusion of having this control just because I have constructed walls.
Mm.
And when it comes to understanding physiology and the cognitive elements of dynamic physiology, it's really fascinating. And I think when Yogi speaks, it makes sense that, yeah, I mean, our traditional archaic understanding of school is a place where you almost get nirvana from all the moksha, from all the comforts. You need to be going through this hard surface and hard demands, very structured, life, very compartmentalized that, science teacher and maths teachers don't come together. And also it's something that somebody has made a decision on. This is the time I eat, this is the time I learn math, and this is the time I will play. Someone has decided. So it's almost like you come out of the school system nearly not making any decisions.
Yeah.
And then in adult life, we've been expected to make decisions. And then, of course, there's a cultural
Seven.
dimension. Let's say in Indian culture, decisions are already made. When you're born, who you're born to, that's probably not in your hand. But then, what's your name, to which school you go to, whom you marry, to when do you have children? You kind of been brought up in a system which is very, very hard, very, very watertight compartments. And then you come to the real world where you actually see that you are being invited to make decisions and you're being invited to question what has been your point of reference. I think the only way that I can navigate the field is that attitude that I spoke about of being lifelong learning and say, oh yeah, actually if I give a bean bag, the learning is not interfered
Yeah.
versus given a hard chair. It's my understanding, and I need to revisit that. And that idea of that, that if we can build internal motivation, and if we can actually break these walls of what we call the focus restrictions, to expand the learning spaces and bring elements which are of course going to facilitate and probably accentuate the learning experiences and bring in this hyper emotional engagement and make this real life connect, that why am I learning this, how is it going to help me facilitate my adult life, my work life, my workforce life. And I think if we can connect those dots, I think that makes more sense than saying that I'm familiar with what I have been and I will continue to do that. And I think that is something that's very dangerous, because I always draw this wonderful analogy of, I will drive the car looking at the rear view mirror, that I will drive my classroom based on what I have been familiar with.
Yeah.
So, two things I just want to make it very clear. Just because I have been familiar with and I have been that, it's not always right. And just because somebody comes with a new theory, it's not always wrong. I think a very judicious blend of what we can bring from the past and what we can learn from the future. That is, my students, I think, is how I would stay relevant as an educator forever. Otherwise, they have already shut down. Have you seen a curtain dropping into the years? I've seen it. Very students,
All the time.
it falls down, and then you have lost the plot. Then
Yeah.
you can only sit and complain and be cynical and be critical of today's young people don't engage and they are not responsible. I'm sorry, we have messed up everything. If there
Yes.
is any hope, it is the young people. So I think we need to bridge this by having this holistic understanding of how our young people learn.
So I want to add something to this wonderful conversation, that every time we have a talk like this, and every time I hear such visionary people talking, I kind of come to the same conclusion that while we are designing learning systems and learning spaces, our first and foremost priority has to be the health. So by health, I don't mean the physical health, but the overall state of balance, where we talk about that balance between the mind, body, and spirit. It is that balance which makes us lifelong learners. It is that balance that allows us to see the bigger picture, and it is that balance that intrinsically motivates us to learn. So I recently penned an article where I talked about the natural tendencies of healthy individuals. And then in the next column, I did mention how do we design for those natural tendencies. So when we keep the health as at the center, so, for example, the first natural tendency of a healthy child is that they seek movement and activity and avoid prolonged stillness, like you mentioned. Then they explore and discover, uh, and they are usually driven by curiosity, and they thrive in connection with others and with nature. So I think we are kind of summing up all the points that we've talked about. And they crave emotional safety and security, which again is the central part of emotional connection and the memory part that you talked about. The making learning lifelong, it's only, and like you said, how to keep their ears open is by actually creating that emotional connect. So when you connect with somebody at an emotional level, you're sure they're going to listen to you, because they are, you've made that connection very, very clear. Then a healthy child finds joy in play and creative expression. So the more opportunities we give for that, the more we are, there's a possibility that we get them to learn. And a healthy individual seeks balance between independence and belonging. So when we talk about agency, it does not mean we just let them do what they want. It means that they feel they have that psychological freedom to do things their way, but at the same time they feel that sense of belonging, that they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, that talks about the community spirit we talk about. And a healthy individual adapts to challenges and enjoys meaningful effort. So when we talk about resilience, we talk about hard work. I always say that if you are in love with something, you're going to do all sorts of efforts. You won't think that it is hard work. It will never feel like hard work. So that all that drama around, oh, you should work hard, you won't have to tell a child to work hard if they are in love with something. So they will naturally work day and night to achieve what they want to achieve. A healthy child craves sunlight, fresh air, and natural rhythms, like Lakshmi ma'am mentioned. A healthy child values nurturing and compassion. A healthy child pursues reflection and personal growth. Like you said, we should keep reinventing ourselves. And a healthy child feels a connection to all life and the environment around them. So, if these are the natural tendencies, that means we should just follow the natural tendencies to uh, go ahead, and we don't actually. It's probably along with all our due conditioning, we've forgotten what we actually and naturally need. Maybe I've spoken too much. Over
No,
to
no.
you.
Thank you for highlighting the importance of health and emotional well-being and all the dimensions surrounding the learning of the learners of 21st century. And yeah, the poem that you just voiced, that was like music to our ears. So thank you for bringing that poem to this session. And Lakshmi ma'am, the answers that you gave, they are like applause-worthy answers. And never ever, I think so, that mind-blowing take has been given by any educator on the design aspect. And this brings me to a surprise that we have now before we close the session and bring the Q&A round. So because this session is also special, it's International Day of Education, and we've got a pre-birthday celebration for our legend Mr. Yogi Patidar today. So let's have, if you have the cakes, your wishes, or anything with you that has been
Happy
sent to you,
birthday
let's bring it
to
out. And
You know,
well,
that's where I did the boo boo. I didn't bring the cake to work, and I kept wondering who sent me the cake. I asked the delivery boy, किसने भेजा? And he said, पता नहीं है, वो तो नाम नहीं लिखा है.
but this was supposed to be a surprise for Yogi, and you already mentioned that, and you
Yeah,
did
but
another boo boo
yeah.
with that.
And listen, and it became a surprise for me, and I didn't bring the cake. So, but I will eat some healthy
So you can eat my cake. I got a nice red velvet matching my
Okay,
dress
same. I got such
also.
nice one. Yogi,
I
Yogi,
got two of them, but one was already taken. So my son immediately snapped, oh, that's dark chocolate. Give it here.
yeah,
So that was
your
gone.
take was that you don't have to push the kids to something. What they love, they'll get it.
They will grab. Yes.
until this morning, I was like, who would have? My family asked. I hope some wrong delivery to nahi hua hai from meant for another flat. I said no. He mentioned Lakshmi Kumar 401. So yeah, but happy birthday, Yogi.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
It's
Time
going to be
celebration,
28.
not like this. Yeah.
So
Yes.
are you 100 years old? Because you have that kind of wisdom of 100 years old. Very.
All five year
I
old
think.
wisdom of a child. I
And
think
name is
Yeah.
all
also Yogi, right, ma'am?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Maybe you're faking your age. Yeah? Maybe 200.
maybe old soul in a new
Yes,
body.
perfect.
happy
No.
birthday, Yogi, and we are supposed to eat in front of
We're
you.
supposed to sing the song, right?
Yeah, please,
Okay.
Arun ma'am, Lakshmi ma'am, any special song that you would like, a quick one?
Oh my
No,
God.
I only know Happy Birthday to
They-
you. That's
Happy
all we know.
birthday to you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Happy
birthday, dear
birthday, dear
Yogi.
Yogi. Happy birthday to you. Oh, you're already eating
Thank you.
something.
But Yogi is not getting the cake.
Yeah, but
Where
the
is his
birthday
cake?
boy doesn't have the
No,
cake.
that's it.
We should have
I'm
done
sure
Cake.
you
some
also don't have the
makeup
cake.
for
Maybe
Yogi.
I'm the only one. See everyone. Red velvet
Uh,
going in here.
Thank you.
thank
And I have the
you.
ragi idli.
Wow.
Ragi idli. Great.
Wow.
Yes.
Healthy food, actually healthy food.
Yes.
Healthy, super healthy.
So,
Great. Now, out of context, but we recently developed a product called potato rava and potato
Hmm.
grits, which is, we create anything which you create from a wheat rava, but from a more vegetable source without having gluten as
Oh,
a thing. So, the ragi idli gave me that context.
interesting. But when is the birthday actually? It's not today.
it-
28th, 28th.
28th. Okay. All right.
so
Okay.
you are going
Thank,
by the
thank
schedule. They have
you.
also asked me to ask you a question. Give Mr. Yogi a moment to share a few words of thanks and perhaps some reflections on his birthday and the topic of live session.
No, I think it's been amazing journey. We connect a lot of times with like I connected Parul also or Lakshmi also, but when you come on this, and when you drive a conversation to this particular way of building learning or education, it is an immense knowledge, or a reflection which comes from that. There are a lot of like-minded people who wanted to change this whole paradigm, on their own steps. So it has been amazing. In last, I think this is about 13, 14 months of our LinkedIn live sessions, I met a lot of interesting individuals who had wisdom, which is a lot of time you never thought of that direction, or dimension, that this can be solved or maybe thought from that particular way also, which is beautifully gives us give me a lot of fuel to rethink and redo what we are trying to do also. So I recently met Dr. Kiran Birsethi in
Mm-hmm.
Riverside. So I was in Ahmedabad, and she put another context to me. So I say, the magic source of learning um, is in the confluence of people, program, and places. You know, the center of that is a magic source of learning. So all three has to come together. And she was questioning me on all this aspect, that when you say people, program, can you prioritize them? You know, what should be the first circle that need to be solved and worked around. And that has given me a different reflection, think around that. What is that, when you solve this, how do you do it, in
Also,
a
we could
mean,
think
what
of
is the
this as a triangle: people, program,
yeah,
and
yeah,
spaces, and the center of it could be the
and
pupil. The four P's.
yes. So this is how. So this is all the small small things. But when you come and when you start working around it, that takes a lot of long step for that kind of impact. So when we are pivoting CVM, I felt a very strong need that as an organization we had to bridge the gap between architects and educators and go to the kids, because in our cases the users cannot be decision makers, and a kid cannot choose what kind of chair they need to sit around. So there is so we as an organization had to be the one who had to think around the final learner, and bridge this gap of or a lot of awareness, and like EDI does, or even like we hear it her on different sessions. So all of us is creating that impact to this learner. So over this 12, 13 months, the kind of LinkedIn live I hear, people are thinking about that user, the learner, in the centricity. And that's what kind of changing for us, and because we had seen the odds of it, from suicide to depressions to anxieties to all kind of problems, even after you had the best of education, best of the profession, and it is not going through. So I feel, as a human, the real happiness is in inside you. So, if this whole North Star can direct towards this, whole effort of ecosystem can go to helping my individual insights, that's the real education which we can contribute to our generations. So, yeah, I'm
So,
happy with
since
this.
Lakshmi ma'am used the hand gesture to create a triangle, so since it's your birthday and a celebration is going on, and also International Education Day, so I'll use my hand gestures to tell what the Gen Z does right away. So this is called as yes. And the problem, you must have seen this also, right?
Yeah,
Great, great. So that
great.
Interesting.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for, for us celebrating my birthday here. Thanks a lot.
perfect.
May you
So
keep innovating
Yes.
and doing new things every time we meet.
And likewise, Yogi. Like, uh,
Yeah,
when I sit
I couldn't
when
hear
I
you,
sit with
Lakshmi.
you, it's like a fascinating world that you open for me. I remember my big wide eyes
It's
when first I met. No, some of you probably have
yes,
done it organically or imagined, but I think when there's someone
yeah.
who's highly, has done deeper research and reflections and thinking, and then you say, "Hey, there's more to absorb."
Hmm.
No, I feel similar, when I meet you, the kind of context you build around. I know one of the story you were telling, that one of your student has started taking his family responsibility and he's coming late and sleeping in the class. You said he's educated for me. That kind of bold take on someone's personal life or education is really 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 appreciable, because that's what makes a teacher or a mentor, I say, It's the you don't become a teacher, you become guru
I
there.
think education shouldn't be on a roadmap to deny existing realities.
Yeah.
It should be about
Yes.
building resilience and skills to overcome obstacles and build on the resilience rather than
Yes.
give a very artificial savior mentalities. We are not here to lead a sterile environment. We are here to build skills. And remember, I think it's so humbling to be reminded every now and then our mortal lives, both as parents and educators. What do? We want to think of equipping our children and our students with skills so that they can navigate their own life.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
there is a very beautiful saying in Tamil that says that you can't pack food for the entire journey of any human beings. Or you have all those fish teach how to fish.
Yes.
Similarly, you
Yes.
can't pack an entire life human beings with only thoughts and words, because situation is going to change.
Yeah.
So what we require is the skill system for our students to, or young people to respond, and I think learn to reduce the reactionary methods.
Yes.
And I think that is where I think there is a whole lot of parallel of how we need to make our young people agents of their lives and not as extensions of our lives.
Agree.
Perfect.
Which is
Very
important.
nice. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
note this down.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you so much.
Like, great, beautiful session.
to everyone watching us live from all around the world. Yes, this session became a treasure of wisdom from all three panelists. And before we conclude, we have a quick 1 minute asks to all the three guest panelists. So, first up, the question comes up to Dr. Parul Minas. Ma'am, since we have touched on some transformative ideas here, what's one thing you hope our audience takes away today?
The one thing that I want the audience to take away is to understand that health and well-being comes before learning. And it is one field, that it is one idea that we've probably forgotten, and that is why we are currently faced with so many issues with our youth. We've just been taking care of the cognitive part of it, the academic excellence part of it, but we've not taken care of the social emotional needs and uh, their need to connect at a human level and understand that health and well-being comes before everything else. So once it is prepped up, once a child is healthy, or we are doing every step, every action that we are taking is towards health and well-being. We are in on to nurturing the natural tendencies, and if the natural tendencies are being nurtured, learning is just one byproduct. It's not. It's going to be effortless. You don't have to work on that anyway.
Thank you, Parul, ma'am. Ma'am, now the question comes to Lakshmi, ma'am. Ma'am, what is the takeaway you would like to give to our audience?
I love this statement by Ramakrishna Paramahansa when he was asked how to treat others. And he gave this very, very beautiful response: who is others?
Yeah.
I think if we can create a world where there is nobody who is the other, and I think we have Hindu philosophical ecosystem that shows how we need to treat each other. And I think we need to remember that we need to douse our neighbor's fire and not be apathetic to the idea and that it will not spread to us. For me, I think that's the thing, that we are one universe.
And COVID has reminded us of that, right?
Yeah, but I don't think we've forgotten it. We've
Yeah,
forgotten
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it. So, I
People are
mean,
quick to
look at
forget.
every day Los Angeles fires, the war, the political shifts, and of what's happening in the world. It's reminding ourselves that the only axis on which I should build my life is to be humane, right?
Mm.
And still teach so many things except just be. I mean, we've forgotten that we are human beings. We are not human doings, right?
Yes.
And we've forgotten that. And I don't know how many COVIDs and how many wars and how many, uh, you know, migrations and how many, you know, mysteries that we need to experience to be. Do we need everyday reminder that life is precious?
Yeah.
You know, which is very sad. That's when I feel that we've gotten to become so many doings that we
Mm.
have missed out beings.
Yes.
Thank you, Lakshmi ma'am. Ma'am, instead of saying thank you, I got a quote from Hindi that is said nowadays on social media and movies. एक ही तो दिल है कितनी बार जीतोगे?
Thank you. So that's why we needed Akshay, right?
And
Thank
now
you.
the spotlight comes on to the birthday boy, Mr. Yogi Patidar. So, what's the takeaway you would like our audience to leave with from after this session?
See, I always, very inspired by Pablo Picasso, and I, read this quote a lot of time. That he says, "Purpose of life is to find gift within, and meaning of life is to give it away." You know, so this is only one life. Enjoy it full. That make mistakes, learn from them, keep growing. It's not going to come again. We talk about reincarnation, it may not happen. So I had never seen someone who gone and came back. It is this moments which you have, and that should be live fully. That's what it is. So yeah, no regrets is what we should do. That would be a real education when we start learning inside ourselves and be happy. That's what we need.
Thank you for giving us the status we can put no regrets. So, thank you, Yogi sir. That was indeed an absolutely
Yes.
amazing session. So, for everyone watching us, this is just the beginning. The real impact starts with what you do next after this session. So, be the spark that ignites change. And now, thank you to Parul ma'am, to Lakshmi ma'am, and to Yogi sir for joining us for this LinkedIn live session on the special occasion of International Day of Education 2025. And to get more inspiration from more sessions, stay tuned on the pages of CIVOM and keep following us. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much.
You all the best and have a lovely, wonderful year. I'll call you on
Yeah.
your birthday, Yogi.
Thank you. Sure.